This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from ConstructionLeadingEdge.com and ConstructionBusinessAccelerator.com. My name is Todd DeWalt. It's my job to help you maximize revenue and eliminate chaos. We've got a good interview for you today with Jereme Montgomery. He is a workforce advocate. He's also an advocate for the concrete industry. And here's what you're going to get out of this interview. You're going to learn what is missing from the conversation about the workforce shortage. You're also going to get some tips if millennials are a mystery to you. A lot of people talking about working with millennials, attracting and retaining millennials. You're going to get some tips if that's you. We're also going to talk about, is there really a skills gap or is it something else? You'll find out what is Nebraska doing that you should be paying attention to. There's some interesting things going on in Nebraska in the concrete industry, and you may want to pay attention to that. And then you're going to find out Jereme's top 10 reasons to be #ConcreteTough. So if you're on Instagram, Facebooks, other social media, check out #ConcreteTough. But you're going to hear about the top 10 reasons to be concrete tough and why having conversations like this is important to attracting young people to the industry. Before we get to that interview, I've got a couple of resources I want to share with you, and I want to tell you about a couple of things that are coming down the pike soon from Construction Leading Edge. The first one is a freelance platform that I'm working on. And what do I mean by freelancing? Well, let me back up and talk about the problem that this is going to solve. A lot of people I talk to say, I need to hire an assistant, I need to hire a bookkeeper, I need to hire an estimator, I need to hire a project manager, and then they immediately get bogged down with, well, I have to find the person, I have to recruit them, I have to hire them, they have to be in the right geography, and then what am I going to do to keep them busy, and can I afford them, and there's all these obstacles that come with hiring a full-time employee. But the reality is there are better ways to solve that problem. The reality is there are freelancers. There are people who have the technology, the experience. They know your software. They've been doing it maybe longer than you have, and they're available to do the work that you need done on a part-time contract basis. See, you don't need to hire an employee necessarily. Maybe you do, but maybe you don't. And if you're not sure, then hiring a freelancer or hiring somebody on a contract basis is a good way to do several things. One, to work out your processes. Maybe it's an interim step to hiring a full-time employee. Maybe it's a good way to try somebody out. But I'm building a freelance platform to connect you, the business owner who has a need for information work that can be done from anywhere in the country, with the people who already have the experience, the expertise, the software, the technology, and they can solve your problems on an as-needed basis. Think of them as an information subcontractor, okay? Hire them when you need them to do what you need and get the best of both worlds. So if you're interested in that, if you are a freelancer, if you're interested, if you know co-construct, or you know bookkeeping, or you know Procore, or you are an estimating expert, then send me an email, todd@constructionleadingedge.com, and I'll keep you posted on progress. On the other side of the equation, if you need somebody in one of those areas, or you'd love to outsource something else, send me an email as well, todd@constructionleadingedge.com. I'll keep you posted as that comes about. Something else to put on your calendar, the next advance, the next live event for construction business owners is going to be October 17th through the 19th. It will be in Lexington, Kentucky. What that means is Keeneland, Bourbon Trail, business training, hanging out with a bunch of other like-minded construction business owners who are dealing with the same things you are. I can tell you, I had the last advance in Fort Myers, Florida in April of 2019. It was an amazing experience. I'll be sharing some of the feedback from people who attended, but you do not want to miss this. So save the date, October 17th or 19th. Watch your email for more details coming down the pike. Also, another thing that is coming down the pike, big changes are coming for the Construction Business Accelerator program. If you want your business to run without you, if you want to have time, if you want to have freedom, if you want to be able to take vacations, if you want to take a distributed retirement, if you want to go to Europe, then keep your eye out for what's coming down the pike for the Construction Business Accelerator basically what we're going to do is we're going to work on how you can set up your business to run without you so that you can go to events like the Advance, so that you can get away from your business for a while, take vacations. You're going to learn how to put systems and processes in place, learn how to empower, how to delegate, how to extract yourself from the business. So if you want to grab a spot early on, then go to constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. Sign up for that, constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. I think I said that right. You can get a free 10-day trial right now. Loads and loads of information in there. Learn how to operate your business from right to left using the Revenue Maximizer. Learn how to sell more work at higher margins. Build up a healthy backlog of high margin work in the Contractor Sales Accelerator. Learn how to plan your projects using the project execution formula. Lots and lots of other stuff. Probably $9,000 worth of content if I sold it piece by piece, but you can get it for only $149 a month right now. Price could be going up soon, not sure, but lock in your price if any of that sounds interesting to you over at constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. And then briefly, if you want to get rid of your bookkeeping, payroll, and financial reporting headaches, if you're tired of driving your car, your business in the dark, if the windows on your business are basically blacked out, if you have no visibility in your financials, you don't know if you're making money, you're getting blindsided and punched in the face with financial surprises, your cash flow's a mess, you don't know if you're profitable or not, you need to get better reporting. You need to be able to look out the windows and see what's coming. And the Apparatus Contractor Services team is set up to help construction business owners do just that. Go to constructionleadingedge.com/headache. Put your information in there. The folks from Apparatus Contractor Services will get in touch with you and see if you're a fit and see how they can help you out. I can tell you, for most small businesses, this is an absolute no-brainer. If you're doing your own bookkeeping, then I have one piece of advice for you. Stop. Just stop. There are lots of other things you can be and should be doing with your time other than keying invoices in, if you even have a good system. But I'm telling you, if you're doing this yourself, there's a better way. The Apparatus Contractor Services team wants to help you. You absolutely need to get somebody else to do your bookkeeping for you. Go to constructionleadingedge.com/headache. Fill out the form. They'll set up a call with you, and you'll be on your way to offloading those headaches. A couple of other things. I have lots of free training resources for you, webinar replays, downloads, templates, etc. Go to constructionleadingedge.com/resources. Get your hands on all sorts of free stuff there. That's at constructionleadingedge.com/resources. And if you're not sure what else I have, just go to my website, constructionleadingedge.com. Poke around there, and you might find something helpful. So without further ado, now let's get into that interview with Jereme Montgomery, and we'll talk about the skilled workforce shortage, or is there one? Enjoy. All right, Jereme Montgomery, thanks for being on the podcast. How's it going today, man?
It's going good. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. So we've been connected on a couple of different platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, I think, for a while, and we've been swapping stuff. So it was finally time, apparently, to get you on the podcast. So We're going to be talking a lot about the skilled labor, what I call the skilled labor delusion, the workforce issue, getting young people into the industry, some of the biggest problems that the construction industry is facing. So let's start with this. There's a lot of talk about the skilled labor shortage, the workforce deficit, whatever it's called. But what is, in your opinion, what is missing from the conversation? What are we not talking about that we should be talking about?
Well, hands down, I think it's leadership. And I think a lot of your guests on your podcast would say the same thing. And I've listened to quite a few good ones. Leadership, and I'll bring up, I believe his name was Mark Breslin, one of your podcasts. He talked about that skilled workforce illusion. If we had more skilled help, that would solve a lot of our problems. We'd get more work done. We'd be able to be more efficient. And I totally think he's spot on. We're missing a leadership issue. If we had, a skillful workforce just isn't very good unless it's well led. think of any sports team, think of, national football champions, and those teams and those kind of leaders that they have, that set certain processes in place, to get that team ready to win, and I think a lot of that times, if we had better leadership, and most of and I just speaking in generalities in construction in general, I believe if we had better leadership, we would be able to recruit and retain a better workforce. And if you can retain that workforce, then you become more efficient,
Yeah, that's a good point. A big part of the workforce that's overlooked are the guys and gals wearing hard hats and tool belts right now. And a lot of our problem is that we're losing those people. I did some research. The separation rate in the construction industry in 2017 was like 60%, which when I first saw that, I thought that can't be right. Yeah. And so that means that 6 out of 10 people on average in the construction industry either quit, get fired, or get laid off every year. But that is National Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers for 2017. And that number increased from 2015 to 2016, from 16 to 17. I don't know what it was in 2018. But yeah, 6 out of 10 people in the construction industry are turning over every year. So let's talk about a couple of different layers of leadership. Let's talk about field leadership. You've been in the construction industry for a long time. Spent a lot of time in the field from what I understand, but let's talk about the effect of the field leaders, the guys, the crew leaders, the foremen, the superintendents. What effect do they have on employee retention?
Well, they have every part of effect of that retention, because, people don't leave companies. They leave their supervisors. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it over time. I've worked in the iron industry as an iron worker for a number of years. I've actually been, I tell this story quite a bit, where I've actually been blessed having pretty good leaders in over my career, but I've also had some pretty bad supervisors as well. And it's taught me, how not to treat people. And I think when we're talking about leadership, that's what it boils down to, is not just having a good supervisor that knows the skill and knows how to build a wall and how to pour a floor and how to run the equipment and stuff, but it's actually taking people's skills and managing those people, just like a coach. And I keep relaying concrete crews and construction crews, and the similarities between that and a sports team are very close, extremely close. That old school mentality of throw them in the pool, sink or swim, those days are over. When somebody steps on a job, they want to feel like a part of that team. They want to feel like they're part of something bigger, Yeah. And I truly believe if we can take some of these good supervisors that have good skills, and we put a little bit of supervisory leadership training in that, they're going to be more efficient. They're going to retain more. We started some leadership training a little over a year ago, and we utilized a book or a manual from AGC, Association General Contractors, called the STP, Supervisory Training Professional Program. And there's a bunch of different modules with this, but the first module is leadership, and you kind of go through this book. We sat down once a month with a selected 10 not current supervisors, but kind of up and comers, and we went through the book's programs, and I'm telling you, in this book that you can buy for about $100, if you want to try to do some supervisory leadership training in-house, this is perfect. And that's what we try to do is do everything in-house. But it'll go from anywhere from, how to motivate people, how to, manage different personalities, and some of the stuff, it's easy to read, it's easy to get the concept, it's a lot harder to practice. So, leadership isn't something that's learned overnight, but it can be taught, definitely can be taught.
Yeah, I think that's a big misconception. Some people think, well, leaders are born. Either you're born a great leader or you're not. And I think some people have a personality or more charisma or whatever that lends itself to being more comfortable as a leader. But really, I think leadership comes down to their skills. They're just like installing crown molding or finishing a floor or driving a truck. They're like skills and formulas. Do this, don't do this. Here's how you handle these things. So yeah, I think for people listening who are thinking, well, man, I just don't have the chops to be a leader. Well, so let's start with this. I've got my opinions on this, but what do you think? What do you think if you had to describe the leadership style, a leadership style that works, or an approach to leadership to somebody? How would you describe a successful leadership style or a mindset about leadership?
First and foremost, lead by example. You want people to follow you. You have to lead by example. If there's an old saying that don't let any of your crew guys do anything that you wouldn't do. If you're going to tell them to jump in a hole and dig, you should be able to do the same thing. And I think by doing that, by leading by example, you earn a lot of respect from the guys that you're surrounded by. Another definition or a characteristic of a leader, I believe, is somebody that has the ability to motivate people. And really, it all comes down to influencing people, influence them in a positive, effective, productive way. Being a part of a team, being a team player, and again, I think one time I heard one of the biggest downsides to, breaking that mold to becoming a leader is self-awareness, being able to look at yourself and say, what do I got to do to get people to follow me? What do I got to do to be the best supervisor I can possibly be? Instead of blaming fault and pointing fingers all the time, a true leader will be able to absorb, those things and to be able to just truly lead by example. And really, I think it's not that difficult to do. It's really about treating people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah, I agree. I think it starts with caring for people. Ultimately, leadership is taking care of the people. My approach to leadership is it's my job to support and take care of the people that I'm leading. And if I can do that, they're going to feel it. That's going to solve a lot of the problems, in my opinion, and people are going to follow me. So in your experience, what are some of maybe a couple of the biggest mistakes mistakes that field leaders make? I'm talking about superintendents, foremen, crew leaders. What are the biggest mistakes they're making that are affecting the retention of the guys in the field?
Again, I hate to sound redundant, but it's that old school mentality. There was a day and time, and it was early in my days as well. I had some supervisors that the more they yelled, the louder they yelled, the faster I moved. And this day and age, it doesn't seem like that works. So we got to stop saying, hey, I'm going to put him to the test. If he shows up every day, if he works really hard for the first week, then I'll give him some attention. I think from day one, we have to take those new employees, take them under our wing, make them feel comfortable, ask them questions, give them responsibilities, see if they can handle those responsibilities, and give constructive criticism, giving feedback. I mean, at the end of the day, pat them on the shoulder and tell them, great job. Hey, are you sore today? Yeah, man, I've used some muscles I never thought I would use. Well, hey, it gets easier, just hang in there, to me, it's just about communication, giving feedback, helping people succeed.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Two things there: feedback and helping people succeed. What I've seen so many times is a new guy will show up on the crew, and then if the foreman or superintendent has negative feedback, then the new guy is going to be the last one to hear about it, but everybody else will hear about it.
Yeah. One time I had a supervisor, and here's when we talk about training, you really want to clone yourself off your even all the way down to your general field personnel, general labor. Eventually you want them to know everything that you know so that they can also become a supervisor and have their own crew. I had one of our supervisors tell me one time, he's like, I'm tired of teaching these guys how to run a total station or how to set walls and all these things, because once they know all that stuff, they get pulled from me. And I'm like, you should really be proud of that fact, not discouraged, but you should be proud, because that's what we need as a company to be able to grow is more people with supervisory capabilities with those leadership skills.
Yeah. And that's an interesting point. Back on episode 95 of the podcast, I interviewed John Morris, and he brought up a point and said that a lot of companies are unintentionally designed to make new hires fail. And I came up with this term I call cultural malware. So there are these unwritten policies that dictate how things are done. So that would be an example where supervisors, they don't want to groom guys because they don't want to lose them. So they keep them stuck where they're at. Or if bringing new guys on, the example that John Morris had was when new guys come onto the job site, it causes, say an apprentice comes onto the job site, it makes the journeyman slow down, affecting their productivity. They don't hit their numbers. Then the office comes down on the superintendent and the journeyman saying, you guys aren't hitting your numbers. And of course they say it's these new guys. So the system is designed to make new guys fail. And that is one of the sneakiest problems in the industry right now is this cultural malware. It's like somebody's hacked into the system, and like a website that's been hacked, and it's designed to fail. And leadership, that's a big issue. Feedback, that's a big one. And then helping people succeed. I think that's a key. It used to be in the old days. Back in 97 or 98, I worked for an old superintendent at the time who bragged about the fact that on one of his projects, he fired every carpenter in the union hall on one job. He went through every one of them. So his measure of success was making as many people fail as possible. Now, what that accomplished for him, I don't know. Maybe it made him feel better, but it certainly didn't get any work done. Nobody wanted to work for that guy. So I think that's an important distinction, is give guys some feedback, just the slightest little bit of feedback. Tell them something, hey, good job on this. Any kind of feedback will be huge. And then understand that your job as a leader is to make people succeed, make them win.
Even if it's, constructive criticism, even if, hey, saw you today, you need to pick up the pace a little bit, they need feedback, whether it's constructive criticism or positive reinforcement. They want to know where they're at.
Yeah, that's good. I remember I was working as a carpenter on a crew, and the only thing I remember this foreman saying to me was, hey, the quality's pretty good, but you need to pick up the pace. That's the only thing he said to me at the end of the day. I was like, well, quality's pretty good.
Quality's good.
Got to pick up the pace. Yeah, so that's good. So let's talk about, you've got a list of the top 10 reasons to be, you call it concrete tough. So let's talk about this a little bit. Actually, before we get into that, let's talk about your background. Let's talk about your story, how you got started, kind of what your career has looked like, and then leading up to what you're doing today. And then we'll get into the 10 reasons you put together to be concrete tough. How's that sound?
Good. Well, I think you just opened up the floodgates, because we're going to go back to when I was in 5th grade. and this is my first experience with construction, because after school every day, I just had a lot of time on my hands, and I was getting in quite a bit of trouble. And my grandfather, who worked for the railroad during the day, went to a residential construction company at night and picked up all the materials on the job site that was laid around. We soaked utility ditches, built retaining walls, and and to keep my nose clean, he said, you need to start coming with me to work every day. And I hated him for it. I wanted to go play, and at 5th grade, 6th grade, but what I thought he was punishing me for was he actually was instilling some of that work ethic. And so I did that for a couple of years, and then it came down to sports, and I got into some sports, and he said, you can go to practice or you can come to work every day. So of course I chose practice. And, then I got introduced to construction management a little bit in college. After high school, I worked for a local design build firm on the iron crew, and did a lot of prefab metal buildings, walking a 6-inch red iron beam on 50 feet off the ground, makes the day go pretty fast, and really enjoyed what I did. And about the senior year of my college career, a position to open up on the concrete side of things, and to be the concrete operations manager. So we had a crew of about 20 guys. We had our laser screed. We had all the early entry saws. This is back in the late 90s, and those 20 guys are pretty rough, and coming out of college not knowing cement from concrete, I call it, I kind of went through that hazing process, and it really kind of gave me the character building skills I have today. But running that crew, I learned a lot about constructability, pumpability, finishability, all the things that are difficult to specify on paper. And so that really helped me in the next chapter of my career, which was being the executive director for the Nebraska Concrete and Aggregates Association, nonprofit group built on ready-mix ready-mix producers, sand and gravel producers, that type of the manufacturing part of the industry. And learned a lot about the technical side of our industry. Learned a lot about what the American Concrete Institute is, and the committees that they put together to write specifications and guidelines, and learned a lot about our local materials, our aggregates and cements, and how it all comes together. In about 2017, Stephenson Smiths Construction, the company I currently work for, had some discussions on coming on board for their business development manager. And I thought that was pretty intriguing. And I've always been more of the construction junkie. My passion is more in the construction than it is production. And so I was kind of missing that, those crew guys that haze me all the time. And, you kind of miss that camaraderie, So the camaraderie I missed. And so I came back and I've been about here at Stephenson Smiths for about a year and a half as their business development manager, and we've been working on workforce recruitment, workforce development type stuff. And it's a long road, but I think we're nipping it in the bud and moving forward. So and over those times, I've had a lot of relationship building with people in the industry, and I've just fallen in love. And and you've heard concrete guys say it before, once it's in your blood, you're just sold on it. As tough as this industry is, you just end up falling in love with it. And once you know a lot about it, it's really tough to get out. Not that I have any desire to, but it's a great industry. Great industry.
Yeah, good stuff. I want to come back and talk about business development, some of the strategies that you found to be helpful. But first, let's talk about this list. The 10 reasons,
ConcreteTough.
Yeah, to be ConcreteTough. So first of all, why did you put this together? Where did this come from? And then let's talk about a few of the things on this list that are at the top of your list. But what prompted you to come up with this list?
There was an article in Concrete Construction magazine years ago, and it was 10 reasons to love concrete. And it really talked about concrete as a material. And I thought, that's a great list. I'm going to come up with my own top 10 reasons to get into construction, or what I called ConcreteTough. Now, ConcreteTough is actually a hashtag. It's hashtag ConcreteTough, all one word. Anybody can go on Twitter or Facebook and search that hashtag, and you can kind of see all the construction career days that we've been a part of. And it's just kind of a Nebraska-based workforce recruitment campaign that we started a number of years ago. So I call it my top 10 reasons to be ConcreteTough. And of course, number 10 is these are, and again, before I get into this, I want to add that these are things that counselors never talk about. These are things that your teachers never talk about, your parents never talk about. And we can generalize most of this into just construction, not being just concrete specific. But number 10, no gym fees. I can attest to this after being out of the field for a decade. Now my back hurts. Now my knees hurt. Now my shoulders hurt. I've gained some weight in the midsection. Gravity's starting to really taken effect on me. But I know some 60-year-old finishers out there that'll kick your butt,
Yeah.
And sure, their knees are hurting and stuff, but I think lack of activity is what really kind of breaks your body down. Number 9, I believe we're the toughest of all trades. Now, one of these days, I know a plumber is going to stand up in the back of the room and challenge me on that. But I think that's something to promote. Yes, it's a hard job, and we don't want to sugarcoat it, But if you're that wrestler in the back of the room that loves that workout and loves physicalness, concrete's the way to go. Number 9, we've got the coolest toys. I can remember bringing home a skid loader one time because I knew it was going to snow over the weekend, and getting my kids into that skid loader and driving around the cul-de-sac, and they just thought that was the coolest thing they've ever seen. One time we were pouring a parking lot, and a daycare passed us on by, and they were pushing about a dozen toddlers. Those kids could not keep their eyes off that pump, off that laser screed, off all the activity that was going on. When you're a kid, you push around your Tonka trucks, and so I don't know where we go wrong from that being super cool, being able to play with these big toys, to avoiding those things. But somewhere in the process, we lose that sight. Number 7, I think every day is different, and I think there's no way I could go to the same and do the same task. I am not a manufacturing kind of guy, but if I stood out on a line and had to put one piece and put it together to the next for 8 hours a day, that would just drive me nuts. I couldn't do it. So I try to promote to the next generation that, if you want to do something different every day that makes the time go fast, get into construction. We have a room with a view, number 6. A friend of mine, actually some competition of ours, sent me a picture one time when they were pouring a helicopter pad on the top of a 15-floor hospital, and the sun was coming up. It was absolutely gorgeous. So if you're that young person that has an inspiration to have that top office on the corner to have a nice view, you can do that with construction as well. Number 5, I got to give it to the people. I was telling you earlier, Todd, before we went live, that I've been really blessed in my career to be molded and shaped by what I consider some pretty influential people, and it's helped me along the way. It's kind of taught me the things to do and don't do. It's taught me how to treat people. But one of the things that we really need to start doing even more is investing more in our people. We put a lot of money into our equipment, buildings and stuff, but we really need to take a little bit of that money and invest in our people, because it's critical to the development of our teams. Number 4, and I really should put this as number 1, but pride. I keep telling these kids, how many times did you bird that build house, and did you take it home to your parents, and were you excited to show it off? And of course, every time, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, yeah, it was great. I loved it. Well, that's pride. That feeling that you have is pride. Now take that to the level of building a building or a bridge, and being able to drive past there for 20, 30, 40 years and have your family sick and tired of hearing the same stories of, hey, I was involved in that project. That was the time Billy Bob came, you just have all these memories. And again, to be able to have the pride to be able to build a community is absolutely priceless. Number 3, opportunity. For those who are willing to put in the work, to be reliable, dependable, to be a team player, to look people in the eye, to be trustworthy, all the things that you don't need to be taught. There's opportunities there. Sky's the limit. Most of the people that I know in this industry that have put in the time, that have worked, have had great success. They have nice cars and they got nice houses. They've been successful, but they were willing to put in the work. So the opportunity is there for people who are willing to take advantage of it. Number 2 of the top 10 reasons is, of course, camaraderie. One of my favorites. I got so many stories about so many people that I've worked with in the past, and you spend most of your day with these guys and gals on the job site. you probably spend more time with these guys and gals than you do your own family. And so they become a brotherhood. You share stuff with them, and you build trust with them. If you need help, they'll be there for you. There's something there that, teachers and counselors will never pick up on, and that's that camaraderie. And of course, my number one reason is it's a skilled craft. It's I say if you can finish a floor, you're less than 1% of the total people that can be able to do that, and that's something to be proud of. If things didn't work out, you always have a craft. Heck, when you get older, you don't want to go out and have to hire somebody to build your wood deck. You don't have to hire somebody to replace your toilet. You want to be able to do all that stuff on your own, and learning a trade, learning a skill is going to be able to do that. So to me, that's the number one reason. But I can't tell you how many times I've helped pour a patio, and I've had somebody's mom with Sally standing there going, "All right, Sally, this is why we go to college." Mm-hmm. I'd love to show her my W-2, or because I guarantee you, just because we look like we're dirty and tired and sweaty, that we were, minimum wage people is a perception that we got to try to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is a big part of what's missing in the conversation when we're talking about getting young people into the trades. I did a quick Google search to see what are we putting out there? What are most people putting out there? And it's things like sort of generic reasons like, hey, get a job and don't have any student loan debt. Well, that's okay. That's great, but that's not super exciting. But what I like about what you put together here is a lot of reasons why. The inspirational part, like the camaraderie, be part of a team. There's a huge opportunity. I think the people are huge. The teams that I've worked with, I've worked with people that I knew had my back, and that's pretty motivating. That's one of the things I miss. I've had to leave teams like that, and that's really hurt. It hurts to leave people and walk away from teams like that. Yeah. So this is good stuff. And I'll give you the opportunity. If people want to get this list, I'll put a link to this if you can make this available publicly, or if it is available publicly, because I think this is something people need to hear about. So let's talk about young people. Lots of, one of the most common topics in construction is skilled labor shortage. I call it the skilled labor delusion, but we don't have time to get into that. The other one is, how do you get millennials interested, or how do you get millennials to work? Millennials, et cetera. Let's talk about that a little bit. What's your opinion on that situation of what do companies how do they need to think differently? What do they need to be doing to make millennials successful in their company?
Well, first of all, you got to get those millennials there. And I believe that, like I tell you what, me and our CEO just came back a couple weeks ago from a kindergarten class. Actually, we had K through fifth grade. And we talked a lot about just how to shake a hand and making good eye contact. But we talked to anywhere from grade school kids to junior high to high school kids. And the message is always usually the same. It's, hey, if you like to build things, try out, construction. Many people love to build things with their hands. They're just, it's built in their mentality. They know they're not going to go to college. So we got to be able to create awareness of what we have to offer first. And it starts at a very young age. And I'll say, we say junior high, but I even say below that, even grade school, I think we need to communicate that. I think the child labor laws have somewhat hurt us. You can't work on a construction site until you're 18 years of age. And I just told you earlier that I started at fifth grade, and so I've always been very comfortable on a job site with a hard hat on, with the safety glasses on, to be able to, just have that comfortable feeling. But to be able to get more people into our industry, we have to create that awareness of how much money you can make, not just starting off, but what the light is at the end of the tunnel. And again, it's a lot of these promotion of the things that I just said, these top 10 lists of getting people in there. But going back to our child labor laws, last year, we, Stephenson Smiths, actually hired our first miner. He was 17 years old. We recruited him from a career day that we had, a hands-on career day. He hung out at our ConcreteTough tent, for a good hour, rod and concrete, edging it, stamping it. And he just fell in love with it. Wasn't even on his radar that morning. And I said, "So you want to come work for us?" And he said, "Absolutely." And I said, "Give me your name and number, and we'll call you up." So LPS, Lincoln Public Schools here in Nebraska, they have and actually it's Department of Education, Department of Labor, have come together to create exemptions for 16, 17-year-olds out there that want to do what they call a work-based learning program. And in this work-based learning, of course, they still can't drive a skid loader. We still can't put them in a trench. There's still things we can't do, but at least they can run a saw. At least they can run a screw gun. And it actually just introduces them to what we have to offer. And last year we had a 17-year-old that, when he was all done, he made, I think it was close to $3,000 over the summer. So when I'm out there talking to these high school kids, and I was like, "Hey, do you want to make a few grand this summer?" They've never even had that much money even thought of. So that's a nice little attractor. Even though my top 10 list doesn't mention money, I think to initially get them thinking about it, you have to bring up the money and what the potential is out there for them.
Definitely. So let's talk about your apprenticeship program. Stephenson Smith has put together the first of its kind apprenticeship program in the concrete industry. So tell us a little bit about the program, and then let's talk about if somebody wants to do something similar. Well, we'll start there. Tell us a little bit about that program, how that came about, and some of the details on that apprenticeship program.
Well, earlier I said, we have to invest in our workforce. We put a lot of money towards equipment, but we don't think about investing in our own workforce. And when I came on about a year and a half ago, we were coming up with these different types of training. We talked about leadership training. We had some print reading classes starting, and we thought, well, for our flat work division, let's put some classes together for that. And originally, I didn't have it on my radar to actually become a federally recognized apprenticeship program, but our Department of Labor had a guy that specifically helps people put together these programs. So we had to develop a curriculum that fit our needs, and we call it Concrete Craftsman. We're not calling these, it's a 2-year program. So you have to have so many hours in-house as far as formal instruction is what they call it. So sitting in a classroom, and then you have to have your OJT or on-the-job training. So for us, it's a 4,000-hour program, basically 2 years, and each year they have to sit through 140 hours of formal instruction. So we built a curriculum that met our needs. We utilized a book from NCCER, which I believe stands for National National Curriculum for Construction. They had a concrete finishing book, and we just really kind of took that template and adapted it to our own, added some things, deleted some things out of the chapter to fit our own needs. Once we got that curriculum put together, the Department of Labor kind of really helped us formalize it and got it ready to send off to Department of Labor on a federal level. They approved it. We had a signing ceremony where it was a big deal, just like the NBA when they sign their people up, they put them on a table. We had the governor show up and say a few words. Department of Labor showed up, said a few words. We brought in everybody into our shop, served hamburgers, hot dogs, and celebrated this kickoff of this program. What makes it unique for us here in Nebraska, we are the only merit-based concrete company with this program, with a federally recognized apprenticeship program. And we're pretty proud of it. We're almost a year into it with our first. And what we originally had done is we took employees that we already had. Some of them even have finishing tools, and we would consider them, pretty good finishers. But we needed to critique this pilot program, and so we put people that we already had in our labor force. Hopefully, it'll grow up to be an avenue, a pathway for high school kids to come in right out of high school and go through this 2-year program. I hope over time, it develops into a 4-year program. And then we can call it finishers. But, I think to call it a concrete finishing apprenticeship program would be a little bit of an overstatement. I think when they come out of it, they'll have a lot better understanding of the technicalities of concrete and more about the materials, more about specifications, more about ASTM standards. We even have a little bit of leadership, print reading involved with that as well. OSHA 10 hours included in there. So I think we got a good program, a good base. One of the things that makes this program challenging is that 140 hours of formal instruction, because we're teaching everything in-house. It's not like we're sending them off somewhere. And so creating relevant content, after a year of it, I'm like, man, I'm starting to run out of material here. We're going to start being creative with how we do this. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. The American Society of Concrete Contractors has over 40 different position statements. And, those are 1-hour learning educational pieces. The American Concrete Institute has webinars, the same way with ASCC, they have webinars, lots of different ways to convey this, the message and the education that we need to do. But that's probably the most challenging part of this is it's not on the job training. These guys are busting their butts every day. It's the formal classroom and instruction that I'm finding to be a slight bit of a challenge. So we're busting through it. I would hope that the guys that are participating in this program now, if they were on this microphone, I would hope that they would say that they have a better understanding of what the industry is like and what we're up against. Besides, it's not just all shovels and hammers and trowels, so we're pretty proud of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. What sort of impact has it had for the company, benefits to the company, benefits to the crew? I guess here's a better question. If a business owner is thinking, I need to put a program together like that, but I'm curious what's in it for me. What kind of return on investment am I going to get? What sort of returns have you guys seen from that program so far?
I think it's a little early to say we've gotten much return yet. Besides the educational piece, investing in our employees, time will tell. I'm really hoping at the end of this 2 years, we graduate our first group of people. I hope they can spread the word out to other people on the crew of what a benefit that was of a program. The benefit's going to be when we can actually recruit people that aren't going to go to a 2-year school, aren't going to go to a 4-year school, and give them that pathway. And I think by doing that, we will increase our retention. And, being able to have a skilled workforce out there that is able to also teach the guys next to them. It just spreads like wildfire once they get the ball going. But 8 months into it, it's tough. It's a big cost on our end, and that makes it tough to be competitive in our market. I said this in our annual training. I said that we have to invest in our workforce, but how much can we invest and still be competitive? Our competition isn't spending this kind of money on their workforce. So at some point in time, we have to be able to measure what our rate of return is. And I'm hoping that's through retention. But I've kind of warned all of our division heads and department heads, my boss and everyone, that this isn't going to happen in a year. It's not going to happen in 2 years. It's going to take a generation to fix this. And I truly believe Stephenson Smiths is the leaders in our market. And if we're not going to do this, nobody is. So hopefully, and really, I'd like to encourage other concrete contractors to do the same thing. I mean, it only makes our industry better.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I think it needs to be done. I think it's smart to do this now because the example the example I use is the fast food industry. Um, 20 years ago, people talked about how hard it was to find, and maybe even less than that. 10 years ago, people talked about how hard it was to find good help. You go into an Arby's or a Wendy's or a McDonald's, and there are teenagers behind the counter, pants down around their knees. They can't talk. All they do is mumble, and they're just awful experience. And people would say, there's kids these days, you can't get them to do anything. But I'll tell you what, every week, my daughter makes me go to Chick-fil-A, and I go through Chick-fil-A, and I see a building full of polite teenagers wearing belts, clean cut. Every other word is, how may I serve you? My pleasure. And they're kicking everybody else's butt in the fast food industry. And they're only open 6 days a week, using the same workforce that everybody else says is a liability. So I believe that the construction companies like yours who are saying, hey, we need to do something different, it's on us to get in front of this thing and not just follow the party line of saying it's all these young people's fault. Well, maybe they're not out there. Let's go make them. I think that's a smart approach. And from a return on investment,
we just can't keep pointing the finger at the problem. We got to find a solution to that problem. And again, going back to how we started this conversation, it's leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I tell people is if you're complaining, and I hear this all the time. I talk to sometimes 3, 4, 5 construction business owners a day. And very commonly, I'll hear people say, I can't find good help, or I can't keep good help. And if I hear somebody say, I can't keep good help, then my advice for them is to take a look at themselves. Because if they're a revolving door for people, then it's probably a leadership issue. They could be a micromanager. They could be, who knows, could be a variety of things. Some of these bosses that I'm sure you and I have both worked for who were a revolving door, but they blamed their people for not wanting to work, not being productive, millennials, whatever. So I think it's very important to look in the house first and say, hey, what can we do? What should we be doing right now to move the needle and make this thing better? And I would say if somebody's wondering what the return on investment is going to be, it could be hard to measure it because one of the biggest costs is in low retention. If you have high turnover, a good rule of thumb would be assume that every time you lose somebody, it's going to cost you 50% of that person's annual salary. Because lost productivity, then you'll have to go recruit, hire, train somebody else, and get them up to speed, not to mention the effect it has on the leadership of their team. So the impact, if you keep one person that makes $50,000 a year, then you've saved $25,000.
Well, let me ask you, you probably know this stat. What's the average retention rate for a construction company? Do you know what that number is?
Well, 6 out of 10 are leaving. So the average for construction is 40%. So 40% are staying, 60% are quitting, being fired, being laid off every year.
We did a study like that in-house, and we were at 68% retention. And I was like, we got to get better than that. But obviously that's a pretty good little stat there, though. So we should be happy. Yeah,
that's pretty good. That is definitely pretty good.
Well, we got a lot of other things that try to attract people that you usually don't see in merit-based type concrete subcontractors. We're an ESOP company. And that's huge, to be able to call yourself an owner, to have ownership in the company. We've actually just started a little ESOP communications committee because we feel like we got a lot of people in the field that don't quite understand what that means. And so we're trying to rally the troops and communicate what that all means. So on top of all the other good benefits we offer, I think that ESOP is probably one of the biggest.
Yeah, definitely. I was part of an ESOP for about 5 years right out of college, and it definitely changes the tone because everybody is an employee owner. So couldn't agree more. Let's talk about business development a little bit. So you're a business development guy. What's your number one tip for anybody out there who is a business development pro or they're a business owner who needs to be in business development? What's your number one tip there?
Building relationships. It's all about relationships. You know, everybody thinks this industry is about hammers and nails, lowest price. It isn't. It's about relationships. You know, a lot of those things do take a big factor in acquiring a job. But, you know, before I took this job as business development manager, I was never business development. I've never been trained. My schooling does not include business development, but, you know, to go out and be able to open up doors, to be able to ensure that we're bidding everything a general contractor is bidding on. And again, to be able to sell ourselves. One time I sat people in a room on a recent sales meeting, well, probably early last year, I guess. And I asked them all the different reasons, why should people hire us? You know, and they came up with some pretty good reasons of why, all the things besides that low price, you know, and it has a lot to do with just our reputation, you know, building relationships. You know, if we screw up something, we're going to replace it. You know, we're going to make it right. And by doing that, you can build those relationships and create a lot of opportunities. So I try to be involved with about any nonprofit organization I can, whether it's the Home Builders Association, whether it's the Concrete Association, whether it's the AGCs. I try to be heavily involved with their committees, to be able to sit next to people, work on teams, and be able to do stuff. And I'm telling you, it's the number one most critical thing is building relationships, getting out there, shaking hands, and treating people like people.
Yep, absolutely. And that is a lesson I learned too late in my career. I wish I'd learned that day one of my career, but I used to think it's all about results and delivering projects and nobody cares about relationships and all that kind of stuff. But I realized that it really is. There are a lot of really big decisions, a lot of big buying decisions are made based on relationships. And people will figure out ways to make it work based on the relationships. And it's very possible that the relationships you have could be the most valuable thing you get out of your career.
Oh yeah. You know, that was number 5 on my list, people, you know, so it's all about relationships, man.
Definitely. All right. So let's bring this thing into land. You've got a podcast. So tell us a little bit about your podcast. And then I've got a couple more questions for you as we wrap this thing up.
So my podcast is called Concrete Garb. You can find it on ConcreteGarb.com. It started off with me and a guy sitting in a coffee shop going, what do we got to do to create more awareness of our industry? And at that time, I was a big Joe Rogan fan, still am. Love his podcast. I love the individuals he brings on. And I thought, you know, he at that time, he was bringing a lot of UFC fighters, and he was promoting them basically and getting their story out there. And I said, you know, we need to do that with the concrete industry. So when I was at the association, we started bringing all of our local contractors. Our very first podcast with a guy by the name of Dave Love. And I always said I've been made with love because he was my first mentor in the concrete industry. And to be able to put his story on audio and to be able to archive it is something really special. And to get these people's stories out there. And since I came to Stephenson Smiths, I can't really interview the competition anymore. So the tone has changed. I'm still interviewing people in the industry, but I've had to refocus a little bit. But you know, we don't make any money off it. It's really just a hobby, but I think it's pretty cool. And to be able to put people on a podcast and archive their stories is pretty unique, I think. And you do a great job with it. There's not very many construction podcasts out there, so Yeah, if you ever get time, concretegarb.com.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I started my podcast. This is March 2019. I started in March of 2014, and it was primarily, I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah, I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I thought, this is really cool. I'd like to talk. It would give me an excuse to talk to really cool people who normally probably wouldn't talk to me otherwise.
Right.
And I can record it and share it with people and ask good questions. And if nothing else, I build my network. And so 5 years later and 110 plus episodes later, here we are. So I'm certainly a big fan of podcasting. So yeah, best of luck with that. Keep that going. It's you probably have more impact on people than you realize.
Well, I'll tell you what, the last kid I interviewed, he's 22. He's a Shot Creek kid. He came from, he started at a young age. And I tell you, by 17, he was running a crew of 6-7 guys. And at 22 years old, he's driving this big company truck all pimped out. And, just to hear, his enthusiasm gives you a little bit of hope, that, there are some hard workers out there that are millennials, or called millennials. And I tell you, it was just a great story to put him out there. I mean, this kid did a lot of skate parks for a lot of pretty big names in the skating industry, and Tony Hawk and those kind of guys. It's just very unique to sit across the table from somebody like that.
Yeah, that's cool. So one last question I always like to ask before I give people an opportunity to find out where they can connect with you is, you've got an opportunity here. You've got 2 minutes to get a message you're passionate about out to a bunch of construction business owners, leaders, executives, decision makers. What would you say to them?
What would I say? What was the question? What did you say?
What
message would I get out?
Yeah. What would you say to this? You got a captive audience here listening to this podcast of business owners and executives and decision makers in construction. What do you want to say to them?
I'd say get involved, with not just what your business is doing, but, get involved with the local associations in your neck of the woods, whether it's the American Concrete Institute, whether it's AGC, whether it's the home builders, get involved on a committee, get your name out there. And by doing that, by being involved with all these other people, opportunities start to arise. And I think a lot of the times we get so focused on what we have to do every day, we don't take that time to volunteer our time. Here's another one. Volunteer your time to something outside of your own industry. We started something here in Nebraska called Concrete Cares of Nebraska, and we raise money to help people fighting cancer. And to be able to hand off a check to a family that's fighting is humbling. One of the most humbling experiences I've ever had. And it will change you. I call it food for the soul. So the message I would like to bring is, there's a lot of messages. Get involved. Get involved is one of my biggest ones.
Good advice. So if people want to get in touch with you, find out more about what you're up to, talk to you about your podcast, talk to you about anything, where are the best places for them to go to do that?
I would say my most public one would have to be my Twitter. If they're out there on Twitter, at NE Concrete, so NE as an abbreviation for Nebraska, NE Concrete on Twitter. I can be found on Instagram, LinkedIn, the website, just about anywhere on social media you can find me. It's been a love-hate relationship for me on those platforms. But I tell you what, this day and age, to be able to get information is very easy to do. Very easy to do. If you can weed through all the noise, social media platforms are a really good way to get your message out and to receive information.
Definitely. And I'll include links to your Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as the Concrete Garb podcast. I'll have that in the show notes. So, Jereme, good stuff, man. Thanks for taking the time to be on here and for sharing with us. And let me know what I can do to help in the future.
Well, hey, man, just keep up the good work. I really appreciate the message that you're putting out. I see your stuff on social media. You're very helpful. It seems like you got a finger on the industry. And so, yeah, just keep up the good work. We need more people like you.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Jereme.
All right. You take care of yourself.
All right. Be sure to reach out to Jereme. Go to the links that he shared. Connect with him on social media. If you want the links or the show notes from this podcast episode, go to constructionleadingedge.com/115 for episode 115. Be sure to go get your free resources on my website, constructionleadingedge.com/resources. Offload your bookkeeping headaches, get better reporting, get somebody to take care of your payroll for you. Stay out of trouble with the IRS and your local Department of Revenue potentially by getting the Apparatus Contractor Services team on your side. Go to constructionleadingedge.com/headache to find out how you can take the first step to offloading your financial and payroll and bookkeeping headaches. And as always, I appreciate the reviews. If you could leave a review on iTunes, that would be fantastic. Take a few minutes, leave a rating and or a review. It helps get the word out there to the rest of the world about this. And if you could do me a favor, share, if you get value out of this podcast, then send a text message or a screenshot or something, but share it with 2 people who you think would get some value out of this podcast as well. Because that's my goal here, is to help the industry get better. So there you go. If you're not sure where to go to constructionleadingedge.com/115 for all the show notes, all the links that were mentioned here. And thanks for listening. I will see you next time.